Hey guys, welcome back. It's Lucky here, and today we're going to be going over a rogue build for the Diablo 4 launch. This build is going to be really easy to put together, insanely powerful. It specializes at exploding everything on your screen all at once, which makes it a lot of fun to play. It's got great mobility, and it's just perfect for launch because it's so easy to put together, and it's not contingent on a ton of legendaries. So this guide is going to be both a class guide and a build guide. It's going to tell you not only how to put the build together, but also how to play the class. So in this, I'm going to go over the skills that this is going to use, the passives that it's going to use, the class specialization system and how it works, as well as any useful legendaries that you should keep an eye out for. So first up, we've got to choose a basic attack, and the basic attack we take is Forceful Arrow. We only really had two options as a bow build, and this one applies the vulnerable debuff to the enemy, which makes them take 20% more damage. That's huge. We're going to take advantage of that almost anytime we can, right? In this game right now. The first passive that we unlock for that allows the third cast of the ability to have a 15% increased crit chance, which is fine. And then Forceful Arrow pierces through vulnerable enemies. So we have a couple ways that we make enemies vulnerable. So this attack is often going to hit more than one enemy because it's going to be piercing through them. So your core ability is going to be the spender, your resource spender. This is your big damage ability, and we're going to use Penetrating Shot. Penetrating Shot fires an arrow that pierces through all enemies in a line, dealing 379 to 463 damage. So it does really high damage relative to other skills to begin with, and it's going in a line. And if we have combo points, which is our specialization that we're going to choose, we get 3 combo points, and then instead of doing 379 damage, it does 721 damage. So roughly twice the damage that it was going to do, right? It's huge. It's really big damage. So what you're going to do is you're going to fire your basic attack 3 times, so you get 3 charges, 3 combo points, and then you fire this ability, and it just deletes everything that it hits. For the passives, we're going to take Penetrating Shot, deals 20% increased damage per enemy that it hits, right? So it's going to pierce a lot of enemies because you're going to fire right through the middle of the pack, which means it's going to do insane damage as it's passing through them. More per enemy that it pierces through. When it's going through 5, 6, 7, 8 enemies, right? You're going to start seeing them explode on impact. And we're going to have some skills that cause a ripple effect that cause that explosion from the back to then start exploding the enemies forward. For the next passive, if Penetrating Shot damages at least 3 enemies, which it pretty much always will, your next Penetrating Shot has a 20% increased crit strike chance. So since we're always penetrating at least 3 enemies, we're pretty much always going to have 20% increased crit strike chance on that next Penetrating Shot. And there's even something we can do to take that crit chance up to 100% some of the time to guarantee that we explode those enemies. We'll talk about that in a second. For this section, in order to get down to the next area, you're gonna have to put some points somewhere. I recommend taking Stutter Step. Critically striking an enemy grants you 10% move speed for 4 seconds. This just feels good, especially at the beginning of the game. We don't have a mount yet. There is a lot of wide open areas as you're traversing from town to dungeons or town to quest objective, right? You do a lot of running, and this extra 10% move speed after you explode a pack just feels really good. You fire your shot, you're gonna get a crit, right? Somewhere in there, and that's gonna give you 10% move speed that helps you get to that next pack faster, explode it, crit it, move to the next pack faster, right? And so on. The other one was you could gain 4% damage reduction, but I just didn't feel like I needed damage reduction. My character never really felt in jeopardy of dying, especially early on. So the move speed just feels a lot better to start. You can always change it later once you get to more difficult content if you feel like you need that damage reduction. All you do to change a skill is right click on the passive and it gives you the point back, and then you left click where you want it to go. The next set of skills are called agility skills, and for this section we're going to take Caltrops. Caltrops throws a big round AoE of Caltrops on the ground. This does a few things for us. It's going to slow the enemy by 53%, so they're going to be crawling towards you, and then because of these passives that we're going to take, the first one causes them to take 3% increased damage for each second they're in your Caltrops. So they're crawling through your Caltrops, and each second that they're in them, they're taking 3% increased damage. So the longer they're in there, the more damage they're going to take from you. And because they crawl 53% reduced speed, they're stuck in there for a while, right? Which means that damage is really ramping up while they're in there. This skill also is a gap maker as opposed to a gap closer. You throw it, your character lunges backwards and creates a nice gap between you and the enemy so that you have the safety to fire at will. And then disciplined Caltrops that says that we've got a 5% crit chance against enemies inside our Caltrops, double this amount against vulnerable enemies. And lots of enemies are going to be vulnerable while we're fighting them. So, you know, you can just make that 10% a lot of the time. In the next section, we're going to take Concealment. Concealment is a stealth ability. It makes you invisible for a few seconds, 4 seconds actually. It also allows you to break free, which is really important. So Diablo has some really long stuns, some really long snares, some really long hold you in place like crowd control abilities. And if one of those hits you, a lot of times you're going to be dead by the time the crowd control is over. Or you can pop this ability and it frees you from it instantly. It makes you unstoppable and grants you 25% move speed. So it can save your life, but you can also use it offensively too. So it's not just defensive. You use this and this first passive gives you 40 energy back when you use the ability. That's almost half of your energy. So that's a huge generator of resources for your core ability, your big damage ability, right? You run out and then you can pop this and you get half your resources back, and then you can go back to firing this if you want. The next one here is countering stealth. The skill that breaks concealment will always be a guaranteed critical strike. So this is nice because it kind of lends itself to generating resources and then using them to fire off a penetrating shot. And that penetrating shot is guaranteed to crit. So that 721 damage is actually going to do way more than that because it's guaranteed critical chance. Another notable skill in here is poison trap. This is a massive dot that you can put on enemies. And if you take this first passive here, it stuns them for 1.5 seconds when they walk through it as well. And this does work on elites, but it doesn't work on bosses, this stun. So really effective for taking down elite packs, taking down larger mobs where, you know, this build is really good at screen clearing, but as with a lot of builds that are really good at screen clearing, you know, sometimes single target fights can feel like they drag just a little bit. And so this poison trap will help melt down those single target boss fights. In the next section, we've got our imbuement skills, and we're going to take shadow imbuement. And what shadow does is it makes it so that every enemy that you kill with a shadow imbued arrow will explode and spread that infection to the enemy that it explodes on, which if they die, they explode and they spread the infection. And if they die, they explode, right? And it's that chain effect of if something dies, it explodes because of this. Well, because the enemies at the back of the pack always explode with this, right? Because it's doing more damage. Our penetrating shot does more damage for each enemy that it hits. That explosion starts, right? That ripple effect starts in the back, which then is doubled by the shadow imbuement, which says if something dies with this on it, it explodes. So that's how you get the really massive screen clear effect. For the passives, we have a 25% increased crit strike chance against injured enemies infected by shadow imbuement, injured enemies, or any enemies below 35% health. So what this is saying is if they're low health, they're even more likely to die, right? Which means they're more likely to explode, which means they're more likely to keep that chain reaction going. And then finally, we have shadow imbuement's primary explosion makes enemies vulnerable for 2 seconds, which means every enemy that is hit by shadow imbuement with this infection, they take 20% more damage, and that makes them more likely to explode, right? And this is why we fire our penetrating shot and you get the big screen clears like this one here. You preload your shot with this shadow imbuement. You can just run around and you pop it. So now my bow is glowing purple. That means the next 2 times I fire this ability, it's going to be shadow imbued, which means the things I attack are going to explode. So as demonstrated, here we go. Boom. They all exploded. Or you can even have much bigger explosions like this one. You've got that. And now it says I only have 1 charge left. So Caltrops this is your gap maker. Right? There's your Caltrops. It puts that on the ground. Enemies are trying to walk through it. They're taking more damage the longer they're in there. Rain of arrows. And then concealment. The chain above my head there is unstoppable. That means I'm unstoppable, which means I can't be crowd controlled. So if you see that over an enemy's head, it is unstoppable and it can't be crowd controlled, or another player's head if you're in PvP. All right, next up we have our ultimate. You can only choose 1 ultimate. So we took Rain of Arrows. Rain of Arrows is going to do a couple of cool things for us. One, it's a massive AoE that does huge damage when you fire it off. It is long cooldown though, once every 57 seconds. So it's almost 1 minute between casts, but it does huge damage in a large area and a couple other nice things as well. The first passive is going to make it so that our effects applied by Rain of Arrows have a 20% increased potency. So our imbuement effect is 20% stronger. Those explosions that are caused by this ability, right? That's nice. And then on top of that, we've got Supreme Rain of Arrows, which causes the second wave to knock enemies down for 3 seconds. So it's a great crowd control ability. You fire this into a big group, maybe things are getting hairy, or maybe there's more than 1 elite in the group or something like that, and you need a little bit of time to beat on them without being attacked. Well, this is perfect. perfect for that. This will give you that 3-second window to fire off a few more abilities while they're getting back up on their feet. As for your key passive, I'm going to recommend Victimize. This says that dealing direct damage to vulnerable enemies has a 30% chance to cause an explosion, dealing 23% of the original damage to them. So basically, this is just going to be making more explosions when we attack vulnerable enemies, and everything's going to be vulnerable because we are using an imbuement that makes enemies vulnerable, right? And everything's going to be exploding because our imbuement is exploding. Our penetrating shot is causing things to explode, right? So this starts the chain reaction, this finishes the chain reaction, and then this passive down here solidifies it even more so, right? There's just explosion after explosion. So when you fire your arrow through a group, it pops. Okay, so what you're going to want to do for this build is you're always going to want to have your shadow imbuement up, right? You're always going to want to have charges of this up before you fire off your penetrating shot. You're going to fire 3 of your basic attack into the enemy. That's your left click if you're on PC, and that's going to give you 3 charges of your combo points. And then you're going to fire off your penetrating shot, and it's going to explode the entire pack, right? That's basically the premise of this build. The next thing we're going to talk about is your specialization. Every class has one. You just press Shift and C on keyboard to bring this up, or if you're in your ability menu, it's right here at the top, specialization. Just choose that. You unlock this by doing a quest. It'll pop up on your screen when you're eligible to do the quest. Go do it. And the first one that you unlock is called combo points on the rogue. Combo points is my favorite one, as it happens. I really didn't care for inner sight. I'll talk about why in a second, but combo points, the way it works is you fire off 3 basic attacks. Each one that hits an enemy is going to give you a combo point stack. And if you look at your core abilities right there, it says 1 point of combo increases your damage to this much, another point, this much. And then the third point, it's 186% damage increase. So almost double damage, right? For this much. So the combo points, basically you're just charging up your next spender. And this works really well because you can't just use your spender. If I use my spender once, right, twice, thrice, right, I'm out of resources. I can't just keep spending anyway. So it's a nice ebb and flow. You 1, 2, 3, and then you get enough, boom, you fire your spender. You do 1, 2, 3, and then you have enough, boom, you fire your spender. So every time you fire your spender, it is doing double damage because of the regen rate that you have. It just works out to be a nice cadence that way. I highly recommend taking the combo point system. It just works really well for the class. You basically makes it so that every time you use your spender, it's doing double damage. Whereas inner sight here, you could take this, it makes it so that your spender is free. It doesn't cost any resources once this is fully charged. The problem with this is this 4-second window comes at the most inopportune times. A lot of times it's kind of chaotic. You have to attack the mob that it tells you to attack. Like there'll be a screen full of mobs and you'll see this eyeball over one of them. And in order to fill the gauge for this to proc, you have to be attacking that one mob, which is inconvenient in itself, because a lot of times you just want to fire into the group and like explode it, or you just want to attack the boss, or you want to attack the ad, but it's going to be dictating what you attack to fill the gauge. And then finally you get a 4-second window when it fills up and the boss casts a pool right under you, some big dot, right? And so now you've got to run out of the dot and your 4-second window is ticking down while you're moving out of it, right? Doing a dodge, whatever. And then you've got like 1 second left by the time you start using it, and it's over. The whole thing's wasted. Whereas with the combo point system, you charge it 1, 2, 3, and then boom, you fire off your big shot, and you always get full use out of your combo points, unless you completely whiff on the shot, which, you know, that'll happen sometimes. That's okay. So yeah, take the combo point system. It's the first one you get, which is convenient because it's the best one so far, and definitely take advantage of this one. It works really well with this starter build. Now let's quickly touch on a couple of legendaries to keep an eye out for. They're really useful. They're nice to have on the build. The written guide for this build will also have a detailed list of the exact location of legendary aspects that you can go and farm, right? These are ones where it's not a chance you'll get them. You're guaranteed to get them if you clear that dungeon. And I'll tell you which ones are relevant to this build so that you can prioritize going to those dungeons. I'll show you which ones they are and where they are. So definitely check out the written guide linked in the description down below for a detailed list. The main one that I want to go over here is going to be, it's a legendary that directly affects your penetrating shot. And it says whenever penetrating shot damages an enemy, 2 additional arrows split off to the side. These arrows deal 39% of the penetrating shot's base damage, and this could have been anywhere between 30 and 40%. So I got a pretty good roll on this. So this is kind of the this is the legendary that directly modifies the ability that we're using, which is kind of what you want for. And so keep an eye out for this one if you do this build. The build is totally usable without this, but this definitely takes it to that next level. Another great aspect to look out for is basic skills gain 28% attack speed. Your basic skill skill in being 28% faster is super clutch because that means your 3 basic attacks that you have to do to get your 3 combo points happen that much faster, right? Boom, boom, boom. You get those basic attacks off real fast, and that means you get your penetrating shot out sooner, which feels good. Those are the 2 main ones I would keep an eye out for. I'll have a full detailed list in the written guide down in the description below, so keep an eye out for that. We put a lot of work into the written guides for these builds, and a lot of times they're a lot easier to follow, so check it out. And if you have any questions about the build, please don't hesitate to let me know. You can either ask the question down in the comments below, or you can swing by my Twitch stream right now over at twitch.tv/luckyghost, where I will be playing and answering questions all about Diablo. So swing on by. I love the company. I love to talk to you about this game. I'm having a blast with it, and I hope you do too. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to like and subscribe. This is a brand new channel that I built just for the Diablo 4 launch. It needs all the algorithmic love that it can get right now. Thank you so much. If you're not sure what to do next, check out one of the videos popping up on screen right now.